Todo esto es bioeconomía.
Bioeconomy.
En la Amazonía. Y promoverla nos lleva a un futuro con más
qualidade de vida,
Well-being.
calidad de vida,
oportunidades
económicas
Economic opportunities.
y protección de la biodiversidad.
Biodiversity.
conexão,
Innovation.
Convergencia para la bioeconomía en la Panamazonía. Panamazonía en red. Foro de innovación e inversiones en la bioeconomía. Sean bienvenidos.
Welcome everyone.
sejam bem-vindos.
Hola, hola a todos, bem-vindos.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning.
Welcome to all. Hoje marca o início da segunda semana.
This is the start of the second week of the Innovation Forum Investment in Bioeconomy from the Pan-Amazon Network and promoted by the Pan-American Network for Biodiversity. Today, we're going to speak in Portuguese, in my case, Portunhol, a mixture of Portuguese and Spanish. And all of my colleagues here are Brazilians, so that's why. So we're going to speak in Portuguese, a little bit of a mixture of Portuguese and Spanish in my case. So this forum promotes the connection, innovation, convergence between interested parties of different sectors, so in other words, all of you, with the objective of promoting a sustainable bioeconomy led locally all over the Amazon. So today we're going to concentrate on something that is very dear to me, which is biodiversity and climate changes, and in bioeconomy. So what happens is that there's biodiversity, right? And there's no biodiversity without this topic of bioeconomy. So the convergence of these two agendas is essential, it's urgent. And this is being recognized increasingly so that we can have a fair future in the Amazon. Bioeconomy should be built from a base of knowledge, ancestral knowledge, also biocultural diversity, and the ecological limits that these climate changes impose. So let's go. Let us begin by introducing ourselves. So I'm going to be the facilitator today. My name is Wendy Francesconi, and I am an environmental scientist, a senior one. And CIAT is a center, a global center of research for the development of sustainable agriculture. And I work in ecology, and I've been working in ecosystem services and the environmental impact. I'm in this department. I've been there for 3 years. So we have the president of Instituto Juruá, João Campos-Silva, and they integrate knowledge, social, economic, cultural knowledge to understand and support innovative initiatives. That's João Campos-Silva. Good morning, João. Good morning, Wendy. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this great group. Wonderful. Our second guest is Simone Athayde. She works with the World Resource Institute, and she leads the area of ethics and quality in research at the Institute. Good morning, Simone. Good morning, Wendy. Good morning, colleagues and everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, sharing this moment and some experience in this informal dialogue. Thank you. Great. And our third panelist is Vinicius Ahmar from the Arapyaú Institute, and he works as a manager of bioeconomy. Vinicius has a lot of experience with the development of effective solutions that are scalable to respond to the challenges of this sustainable movement. Welcome, Vinicius. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Wendy. It's a pleasure to be here with you and João and Simone, and let's have a great exchange. Thank you once again for the invitation this morning. Great. So before we start our conversation, I would like to invite all of you behind the screen to share your questions in the chat. And we're going to have a moment later on in the rounds for you to ask your questions, and the speakers will give their opinion. So, as a first question, it is for João. So, from your experience and perspectives in the implementation of projects with communities near the riverbeds and that support the Institute, if I ask you what the current state of biodiversity, bioeconomy, and bioclimate in Brazil, especially in the Pan-Amazonian region, what would you say? Wendy, thank you for the question, and I'm going to share my screen just to give you a general view of the topic very quickly. Can you see my screen? Yes, we can. Great. Okay, so I brought a very important message here for this conversation about bioeconomy, and it has everything to do with the need to integrate different players, different institutions, areas of knowledge, and I'd like to talk about the power of diversity to strengthen resilience in the socio-bioeconomy. And the first point that I think has to be very clear is that everything related to the Amazon is born with the substract of diversity. So biological diversity, we're in a place that maybe is the last great frontier to human knowledge. It's a place where we can find a small invertebrate that is unknown and groups of humans who have never interacted with the world the way we know it. And this is a great power, and it places the Amazon in the spotlight in the world. But behind that, we also have cultural diversity that is fantastic. We have groups of humans that are so different, and they not only bring the issue of coexisting with diversity in thousands of years, and these groups have been also providing a lot of social technology, lots of different ways of interacting with biodiversity and in a harmonious way. And I think that's exactly what the world, what the society, what modern society needs. So for us to be able to structure the future, we cannot set aside all of this knowledge from the past, the knowledge that these people bring, and also environmental diversity. So there's lots of Amazons inside the Amazon. So talking about socio-bioeconomy today, this is a wave in the Amazon, but this is something that has been practicing for hundreds of years by the traditional population. So we have to talk about this diversity, and there are very deep implications for any solution that we have about this topic. So let's keep this in mind, diversity, because it's going to be important at the end of the discussion. And this system, this social and ecological system, it is immersed in a myriad of threats. So we're focusing on climatic changes, but it's always important to remember that these threats are interconnected. So besides the climate changes, we have illegal mining, we have deforestation, we have the over-exploration of resources, degradation and fragmentation of the habitats, and we also have the expansion of drug dealing and the occupation of these factions without any governance because of negligence from the government for a long time. So it's a list of threats that impact all of the dimensions of socio-bioeconomy. And talking about climatic changes and bringing a more concrete example, I just wanted to bring an example of what happened with the management of pirarucu, the fish pirarucu, because it is an emblematic example of socio-bioeconomy, because it represents something that is genuinely from the Amazon. It comes from traditional knowledge. You have the Amazon people as the main actors in these arrangements, and it integrates
Recording in progress.
the the development, the social well-being, with the protection of biodiversity. And with the climatic changes, especially with the non-predictability that has been so frequent of the great droughts and the floods, this is something that is being impacted, as well as many others. So in the last 2 years, we noticed that especially the drastic drought we had, this has impacted fishing activities, reducing the quotas. The management of Pirarucu, there is territorial protection, and there's a quota of the amount that can be taken. So you have the fish that is hiding behind the vegetation, under the vegetation, and the fishing is not able to happen. And that's because of the drought. And there's a drastic impact in family planning and for the fishermen and their financial area, and also in the production of fruit that will not allow for the development of the predators of Pirarucu, other kinds of fish. So it's a systemic impact that we don't really understand very well. We don't understand the size of this impact. And it's a severe impact in the production, because the dry rivers do not allow these large boats to navigate. And also, this creates a huge impact in the biodiversity and the socioeconomy of the forest population. And what we notice is that to deal with these arrangements, the key is in diversity. And we're talking about diversity that is different from what we were talking about before, but starting with diversity in the socio-bioeconomies. Socio-bioeconomy is something plural. It's very difficult for you to work with socio-bioeconomy focused on a chain, because these chains are seasonal. So when you analyze domestic economy from a family, it is based on several chains, 3 to 5 chains that complement each other during the year, providing the annual revenues for the family. So this diversification is extremely important in resilience, because then the impact of one ends up being supplied by another chain that was not impacted that much. And this makes the communities have a better power of adaptation to deal with these uncertainties. And there's also diversity in the generation of knowledge, to understand about the Amazon and think about ways to deal with things. We have to put everything on the same table: the indigenous and traditional sciences, conventional science, the arts, because these other players, they are science for our society. Many things that are looked at, threats, the climate change, they're also being said out loud by artists and many others for a long time now. So it's important for us to, in fact, take away these ties that tie down these areas, so that we can think about solutions that are legitimate in the territories and that are, in fact, efficient. So this is the only way that we will be able to implement what we're calling institutional diversity in the governance system, which is a polycentric governance model, where we have several players working in different levels in decision making, and there is management that is common. This is very important for resilience, because sometimes the problem can be solved at a local scale with less players, but depending on the problem, you have to move to another level that is regional, with other players, with other skills to deal with the problems. And sometimes the problem needs a more national level, with other players working on public policies and funding systems. So the integration of these different institutional levels is extremely important for the chain. And this is what we have seen with the management of Pirarucu, where the problems are sometimes solved in a community meeting, or if it goes to a meeting base or a reserve, or the Pirarucu collective that brings in all of the organizations that deal with the Pirarucu. So it's different levels that deal with the same players, but with different problem-solving capacities. So this is extremely important for us to integrate all of this with the players in the Amazon who are also talking about this, who are also denouncing the threats. And a way of giving an example of what I'm saying, so this is to conclude my talk. It's about going deep into active listening in the territories. So this has to be done in a deep manner by the governments, by the decision makers, by the researchers. They really have to listen to what the territories are saying, and they have to include these people in the decision making. This song, for example, is called Lamento da Raça from Emerson Maia from 1996. And I think it's a symbol of the Red Bull from Parintins, and it says, the Indians cried, the white men cried, everybody's crying, and the Amazon is burning. Ah, wow. What pain. How horrible. My Sapopemba tree and my childhood has become timber. Oh, what pain. Oh, how horrible. Then Saracura is running away from the heat. It's not coming back. There's the Onça Pintada running away from the burning, and she's not going to be back. And all the monkeys, together with all the birds, they will never come back. And they will never come back. Never. It has become a desert. My river has dried. Where should I go? So it is a song that was written about 30 years ago, and it just describes what has been happening over the last 2 or 3 years. So I think many times we have the Amazon burning, literally, and this has already been denounced 30 years ago. This is just an example, but I just want to say that what is missing is not the knowledge about the topic. It's an integrated action in socio-bioeconomy. This is part of what is happening, and the socio-bioeconomy is extremely important for the institutional and political situation, the same as with agribusiness ever since the military dictatorship, because you have a lot of investment in infrastructure and subsidies, because we cannot place the challenges of these chains on the shoulders of the local communities. And definitely, it's not only about this economy blossoming. We are just living in a place that has been ignored by the public power for centuries. And that's the message. The answer is in the diversity. And this is what I had to say. And let's move on to the next questions. Great. Congratulations. Congratulations on your singing. Thank you very much, João. Very interesting what you bring. And I think this view of the Pirarucu comes from the territory and the communities, but also the pain that you identify. You identify how this scales up and having an impact from the communities inside and out. And let's talk a little bit more about this mission, a global mission. So let's go on to Simone. Simone, when we talk about your view as a researcher, what are the main bottlenecks that you see in different countries in the Amazon region that prevent the bioeconomy to act on the biodiversity, to have a main role in the strategies, the national climatic strategies of the region, the biodiversity strategies as well? Thank you very much, Wendy. It was a beautiful song. Thank you for sharing with us, João. We know how to appreciate the beauty of a song and the music and the art in the Amazon. That's all very important for us to face these challenges, and there are many. So talking a little bit about the bottlenecks. for bioeconomy to have a central role in the MDCs as well as in the climatic and regional strategies. As João was saying, it's necessary to have a coordinated effort between governments, the communities, central communities, and the international sphere. This is already happening in some territories, in some chains, in some initiatives, and this points out the way. It's important to learn from these initiatives that are already ongoing and to recognize the value they have, because many times, as João was saying, these initiatives, they come from the territories and they are based sometimes on projects or initiatives that don't really have guaranteed financing, but they are able to maintain themselves and they're able to go beyond with this collective effort that we have. So I would like to list 5 main bottlenecks for the bioeconomy to have this central role. So this is the role inside the development policies and climatic policies. The economy has to have a central role, as João was saying, and we have lots of bottlenecks, right? I only brought a few simple ones, and one is the lack of integration in the climatic policies and the regulatory and institutional ones, especially in the Pan-Amazonia region. So we have a situation where today the climatic policies, they frequently give space for agriculture and economy, and they don't look at nature and biodiversity and what knowledge is based on the live technology that we have and the local knowledge as well. There's great institutional fragmentation. There's the absence of regulatory marks in bioeconomy. This includes the lack of regulation about access and benefits from the genetic resources. We don't have that solved regionally yet. We have a lot of bureaucracy for registration and commercialization of products from biodiversity from different countries. And this generates a legal uncertainty for innovative countries and the local population. When we talk about the carbon markets as well, that's also something we're probably going to discuss here. And we're also going to talk about the funding in the afternoon. The other subject is insufficient funding and badly directed to. That's a bottleneck. There is a bad access to funding, especially small-scale producers. And sometimes international climatic resources don't get to these projects that are based on the forests or the rivers. And there's very little articulation between the public and private funds that could be solved in a better way. It could be much better integrated. We have bottlenecks in terms of infrastructure and capacitation because, it's unbelievable. There's little investment in the basic structure for these chains. So we have a problem of access that is huge in the Alto Solimões region, also access and also the running of the production because of the historical droughts. Definitely this becomes a bigger problem, and we need to have something that is coordinated to solve this problem. We also have low valuation of the local knowledge and research to be able to apply this research and understand what's happening to these value chains, and including the traditional local knowledge that knows what is happening so that they can work together. And finally, the markets and the market values, that's all fragmented. The chains are all fragmented. There's very little value given to them, and there's difficulty to access the national and international markets. A lot of informality, which is a natural characteristic of the Amazon, but it also brings informality and lack of certification. And that's also difficult to get competitiveness and also valuing of the ecosystems that are generated by these initiatives that come from the territories. Thank you very much. Back to Wendy now.
Obrigada, Simone.
Thank you, Simone.
Agora vamos passar para Vinicius.
So now we're going to move on to Vinicius. So how are you, Vinicius? Let's look at this wonderful work that you're doing in the Arapyaú Institute. What kind of learning have you gotten from the public and private and community population in the construction of bioeconomic plans with an impact in the territories. Once again, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you, Wendy, for the question. And I'm going to try and add to what João and Simone said. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to sing. João, we can maybe organize something for next time, but it's great to have you in the debate. But I'd like to bring a little bit of what the Arapyaú Institute is. We are a philanthropic Brazilian institute, and we develop and fund initiatives and networks for the inclusive development of carbon in Brazil. We work in the Amazon biomas and Mata Atlântica in Bahia, where we were founded. And coming to our debate, we understand that, and we understand what João brought. To solve the complex problems, we need to work together. We all need to be on the same boat, discussing and elaborating solutions. So we always try to do our connections with the different sectors and always acting on key leverages according to the different agendas that we work in. And as a philanthropic organization, maybe there's a little bit of difference in how we act. We have the possibility of working on specific issues that the others can't. For example, the difficulty in acting and connection, and we're very well connected with the public and with the communities in the area because of what we do. So then we're able to leverage the agendas in different ways. So while you were commenting, I was sort of organizing my thoughts. But in general terms, if we're going to give three big examples of how to start and starting the debate, we have examples of ways and how we've been acting. So when we talk about helping the networks, over the years, we've been working on this articulation of putting all the different players at the same table, trying to find points of convergence. So some of the ones that we worked with were talking about agriculture, and then the biomas that we also incubated and we helped to grow. And we also have Indonesia, Latin America. There's lots of things that are happening in these areas, and also about the Amazon itself. So we had something that was very close to what we've been doing, things that happen in the Amazon, working on culture, the local communities, and also a great articulation in public policy. So we have a whole block of universes and agendas that need to be debated more deeply at the table, and bring these players to act on this and work on this, debating on this. And there's a whole area that philanthropy can definitely help with, and that's what we've been doing. Now, the second point is what Simone also talked about, how to work on the bottlenecks of the structuring of the chains, how to make the funding conditions. I think we have more than 10 years, and considering our history, because we were born in the south of Bahia, in the forest, the Atlantic forest, so we saw the cocoa in the agri-florist, and for Brazil, we do act in a bigger way now. So having cocoa production with family plantations, family farming, and being able to generate revenues for the territories and being present. So we decided to act on this, and we've been working for more than 10 years in the structuring of this chain, the construction of investment mechanisms, getting more revenues for the producers, and also the possibilities of biodiversity, and then also testing and creating a basis, working with the academia to generate scientific evidence. And slowly we're trying to put this all into solutions that will lead to better revenue of the local families, and also protecting the forests and generating revenue for the country as well in a low carbon economy. We've also done a lot there, and today afterwards we can go deeper into that, but we can also see see how this will echo in the lessons, and we can put this in other chains and have more people involved. And because we're in the private sector, we're able to do a lot of articulation with the off-takers, which is a big problem that has come up for several economy chains. It's very spread out, very difficult to organize the production of bioeconomy, but, and also connect to the markets in a structured manner. So we've been dealing with that a lot, and philanthropy can actually leverage resources and the connections and bringing the communities, which are at the center of the discussion, and the people, and putting culture as a basis here. And to conclude in this first intervention, we have a project that we're doing together with the government, the Secretary of Bioeconomy and the Ministry of the Environment and Climatic Change. We're helping in the building of this policy in the socio-bioeconomy programs, together with Secretary Karina, and we're helping in the organization. It's us and the coalition, and we're all working together and we're qualifying this debate and giving support to the policies and trying to make this get to the territories. So we are building all this together. So there's a little bit of this connection with the public policies. That's very important. And I think with these three cases, maybe we can, find out how philanthropy can connect the different organizations and people, putting everybody at the same table to solve these complex problems that we deal with in our agenda. So I'm going to pause here. Back to you, Wendy, and we'll continue this exchange. Great. Thank you. Thank you for the learning and experience. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about the perspective of the Alliance Diversity. So we are a research center focused on agriculture, and we work to promote more sustainable agriculture and agronomic practices that are better for the environment, agrobiodiversity, and business that can be sustainable. And all of this for the chains, agri-chains, can actually work with nature. And for this, we need a whole set of factors that we're talking about here and actors, so that ever since the agricultural and feeding chains, we can make a transformation. And you know that agriculture is the main reason for deforestation. So in Latin America, we're talking about 80 to 90%. And the losing of the forest and the natural resources, the loss of biodiversity, that's a great source of expenses. So to talk about all these people, small producers, large producers, banks, and everybody else, we need sustainable activities that make sense, economically speaking. So we're talking about bioeconomy that makes sense for us to get financial return and with a positive impact on society and the environment. So we have cases that will need more research, and we have some cases that are going to need better tools. So they have to be cost efficient, and they can generate information for the decision making, and also to generate evidence. So you can have the cases that you can actually scale up. And inside our experience at CIAT, we were pioneers in the initiative of impact, and it's the Amazon Biodiversity Fund. It's a fund that produces different agribusinesses and other activities for the production of products coming from the socio-bioeconomy. And besides that, besides generating profit, it will also have a positive impact in the environment. We have a tool called Terra Bio, and this will allow us to make the monitoring of the impact on biodiversity and the forests, so that then we'll be able to say that these investments had the impact that they should have. And then providing transparency to the products so that they will also reach the market with an added value, because it's not only a benefit there's also benefit not only in the market, but also for the local and traditional population, as well as the forest and biodiversity. So for bioeconomical aspects, we need to have this evidence. We need to have these mechanisms so that these international and agendas and the climate and biodiversity, and now we have this commitment of bringing all this information to the populations. We have to take this to the people who are suffering the impacts and who are doing the right thing, and to be able to strengthen these products and chains and have market solutions. So in theory, it's a win-win-win situation, good for the communities, good for the climate, good for biodiversity. But in practice, we already have the details, so that now I'm going to invite you to watch a video from a partner of our network, the Pan-Amazonic Network, and it is focused on the product, sustainable way, and see how this product can actually get to the market with a differentiated price because of these positive impacts. So let us watch the video.
¿Sabías que existen más de 500 especies de abejas sin aguijón en el mundo y que Ecuador alberga más del 45% de esta diversidad global? La UNESCO proclamó el 20 de mayo como el Día Mundial de las Abejas, reconociendo así su importancia para los ecosistemas. Y como dijo Albert Einstein, si las abejas desaparecieran, al planeta solo le quedarían 4 años de vida. Lamentablemente, muchas de estas especies hoy están en peligro, sobre todo las abejas sin aguijón, por causas como la deforestación, la minería ilegal, la agricultura intensiva y el uso desmedido de agroquímicos. Mi nombre es Jefferson Narváez. Viendo cómo su protección era ignorada por la mayoría, decidí fundar ASA, el primer hospital de abejas sin aguijón. Desde el corazón de la Amazonía ecuatoriana, rescatamos, cuidamos y reproducimos estas valiosas polinizadoras, que no solo producen una miel medicinal única, sino que también polinizan especies clave para la salud de nuestros bosques y comunidades. En ASA también formamos a mujeres y jóvenes en meliponicultura y bioeconomía, creando una oportunidad sostenible mientras protegemos la biodiversidad. Nuestro trabajo no es solo por las abejas, es por la vida, por el equilibrio, por el futuro. Y ASA es una respuesta real frente a esta crisis ambiental, porque si cuidamos a las abejas, nos cuidamos a todos. Únete, difunde, actúa, porque sin abejas no hay vida.
É mesmo, sin abelhas não
That's
há
right.
vida. Elas são responsáveis
If you don't take care of them, there's no life, because they are responsible for 75% of the agricultural products, right? So thank you, Jefferson, for this example. So let us go back to our panel members. João,
Vamos então de volta com você.
back to you now. Question. So what kind of concrete examples besides Pirarucu could you give us, talking about successful bioeconomic products that came from the Amazon communities that will improve the climatic resilience and the conservation of biodiversity? Well, Wendy, I think a very interesting example that the Institute is involved in is in the shared management of the Juruá region. So more than the product, it's an example of governance that is very interesting, because you have the different production chains with pirarucu and rubber and the oils and flour and acai. All of this is done by local management. For example, the management of Pirarucu, Vasproc does it, and then the oils from Codainja and Amaru. These are base organizations, and you have several partners acting together in different decision points. And that's very interesting because it ends up strengthening the territory, considering the activities. So a basic example would be the climatic changes, the integrated actions with the great drought that we had. It was only possible to deal with it through the integrated action of different organizations. Then we had a ferry boat coming in to Juruá, and because of the union of the organizations, we were able to take IBAMA and the federal police to burn these ferry boats. So it's several chains in the territory that are anchored in this governance system that is polycentric, and I think that is extremely important for these models. You need to have active participation of funding companies, and they will actually listen to the demands of the territories, recognizing that they are the main players, and also the alliances. There are several examples that happen in the Amazon with more developed chains, others are less developed, but I think the step that we have to give now is to have a project the structure to allow these productive chains to do well without having to deal with the great problems. Just to give an example of what I'm talking about, we have an export project with Pirarucu, and to export, you need to have high quality ice. We didn't have high quality ice in the whole region. There was no supplier, no vendor that could actually provide us with ice without contamination. So you have to put 1 million more to make an ice factory. So while these bottlenecks have to do with these base organizations and the communities on the shoulders of these companies, then definitely it will be difficult to increase the impact of these chains. Yes, thank you very much. And I think that this happens, these bottlenecks happen with all the chains and, different perspectives. So let's go back to Simone. So in your perspective, what are the main impacts of the climatic changes in the bioeconomy chains, especially in regions around the border of the Amazon? And how are the local communities responding to these challenges? Thank you very much, Wendy. I have some slides to share about this. And I'm just going to give you an example according to my experience in the region, which is a triple border between Brazil, Colombia, and Peru. Let me just put the presentation mode on. Can you see the screen? Yes, we can see it. And this is also work that is done in collaboration with João and other colleagues inside the Fulbright Amazonia program. And we have a policy brief for the bioeconomies in the Amazon, for the business based on the communities and social technologies and nature. And we wanted to also share. It is work that is done in collaboration with Pactas. It is a technological and scientific pact in Alto Solimões, the region of Alto Solimões, with my dear colleague, Professor Tassiana Coutinho, that leads this and co-signs as well. It's a co-production project with the Federal University of the Amazon. And this is a link to our policy brief, Fulbright Amazonia, so you can all access it if you want to put it in the chat so that we can share the work that we did together with João and other colleagues from other Amazon countries as well. So the main objective of this work is to contribute towards the implementation of the bioeconomy programs and policies and strategies, and also in terms of having initiatives in bioeconomy in the border lines of the Amazon. And we went directly to the communities and the territories. We checked the population there and what they're doing, how they saw the impacts, and how they're dealing with the impacts with social innovations as well. We had the example of the hospital, Athayde. This is social innovation, and there's also plans that go beyond Brazil and the importance of this view of the Amazon, having these alliances between countries. This is definitely a great call. And we know that the impacts of climatic changes today reach each dimension of our existence. So it's not only small regions, it is in the place they grow, in the global aspect. We have more than 340 people affected by the historical drought of 340,000 people only in the Amazon, more than 85,000 families. The Negro River is at its lowest level in 122 years. So it is a climate emergency, and it's a bioeconomic emergency as well, considering what João has said of having a policy that is really national and established in the country, which is not bioeconomy, it is the economy, where bioeconomy is part of our economy, and it will have the attention that it deserves for us to be able to face these challenges of climatic changes. Now, in the territories, in terms of the territories, we've been working with several groups and communities connected to different types of value chains in the Amazon. So the fishermen and the artisans and agriculture in general, artisans also specifically with women, and all of them mentioned the impact of climatic changes in one way or another. And many of these impacts are causing migration. This was already happening, but now this is a problem that is increasing. So it's non-sustainable migration. People leave their territories. So what happens is people leave their territories, and the territories are there vulnerable and open, and you have failure in the transmission of traditional knowledge. You have erosion of knowledge, a cultural erosion, and a real loss, a territorial loss in terms of protection, because it's already a big problem. It's very vulnerable in these border areas. And considering these problems, they are also increased because of the dynamics of the characteristics that are established, because there's codependency between different countries for basic services. So healthcare, access to water where there is none in the communities, and also basic services. So education, for example, in the region. Let me go on to the next one here. So what are the answers, the solutions that are coming from the territories with our initial experience? So there are very interesting initiatives, for example, of community management of water, the collection and storage of rainwater in community tanks, and the reactivation of the natural sources and springs. And there are several artesian wells that were opened, and there was a possibility there, and this has improved the access to quality water, which is a big problem for the development of bioeconomy, as well as for a factory of acai and lyophilization of Amazon fruit like acai, because you don't have quality water to do this. So now, as João said, you have to have basic structure, because there was no good quality ice and there's no quality water. You have to implement the water treatment system locally so that you can have a lyophilization factory in the region. The diversity that João talked about, the agroforest systems and agroecology, this is already happening, and the communities know about the species. They know what to place and how to protect the seeds and agrobiodiversity as well. That's a topic that Wendy works on, and João and Arapyaú also does that. We're all emphasizing the importance of this, and also the traditional knowledge, monitoring of the territory, the community. They've given several examples of the monitoring that happens, connecting at different levels and using technology, the socio-bioeconomic economies. So this is what João was talking about, the strengthening of these cooperatives and associations that not only provide autonomy, but also guarantee the protection of these ecosystems. And I think that these political incidents in the regional and global forums, that is important. We have this incidents by the communities, and we observe what happens there in these forums. So when we had the COVID problem, they created a chamber that was binational between the city halls of Tabatinga and Letícia, which is where we have where we're going to meet everyone. And they talked about the emergence of COVID in the region. So now we also have a climatic emergency. So a call from the territories to provide emphasis and guarantee that this survival and the bioeconomies that guarantee the survival. So not only in terms of revenues, but subsistence of these communities. So there's a great opportunity for these connections to happen, and then the city halls at the municipal level will be coordinated and become strengthened, and everybody working together in great common challenges like these of strengthening the bioeconomy chains, and in times of climatic emergency, just like we're going through now. So what happened over there? Just two more examples. It was also that the production secretariat, they strengthened the programs and the policies like the school feeding program, and they bought directly from the communities for this. So there are local communities to solve this problem about the lack of being able to sell the products because of the navigation. So there was a bottleneck in terms of the flow of the products and the markets with agro-biodiversity. So together with the local policies, a coordination that is more regional. So you have the localization and you feed the global systems, but you also offer these solutions locally. And also doing applied research, which was a demand from the communities, especially in the resources used. And we can see lots of impacts, but they cannot understand what is happening. That was a demand from the communities, strengthening the institutions and the local organizations so that there would be the fixation of the people, so avoiding migration to the large centers like Manaus and others, and also the value of these social bioeconomies, which is what we're already producing here, and for them to integrate with the regional public policies, trying to find a better connection, more equitable connection, technically speaking. So I think that's the experience I wanted to share with you. Thank you. Great. Thank you for your presentation, Simone. And for these alliances that Simone was talking about, for them to be really effective and true over time, we have an urgency. But the question for Vinicius now is, what do we need? So Simone gave us several tips, and João did too. So what are the factors that we really need to work on, the enabling conditions? What are the enabling conditions that are possible to promote bioeconomy? What institutional conditions, the governance conditions that are necessary for this bioeconomy to become a viable alternative? Vinicius? That's a difficult question, very difficult to answer, but we have a few tips about how we're able to address this. And something that I think is being brought, it was brought by Simone and João, and there are other interventions. This is related to, first of all, understanding the specificities of each of the chains and the communities or the actions that are being taken. But the first step is to understand, and we're only able to understand if we have a connection there, if we listen to them. I think that's the first point. So we have to integrate, place the people at the center, listen to the people, and look at the territory, the people in the territory, and that makes a big difference. And the second thing is to understand the context we're in. So we talk a lot about how we put Brazil in the map and all that, but the Amazon, wow, that's more than half of Brazil. And Brazil doesn't really look at the Amazon when you have the knowledge of the Amazon, because it's lots of different Amazons, right? It's not a single one. And for the people who produce cocoa in Altamira. It's completely different from those who produce açaí in Bocajuba. So these are very difficult, and we're going through the pressure of getting to the cities, and that's a different kind of problem. So we need to have a close understanding of the realities, and then we have some local cultures of dealing with all of this in the context for the production of solutions. That's a good start. And then connecting this to a global agenda. We're not isolated in the world. Our experience with cocoa, we can see an increase in price that has to do with climatic changes, and in the biggest producers of cocoa that are in Africa. And we have a good perspective because we have a production model that is more sustainable. You have more family agriculture, so we can promote a kind of plantation in the forest, and it's diverse. There are other things also with Brazil nuts and cupuaçu. So it can be sustainable, and we have to include those who need revenues. And then we start a market that is looking for this increasingly. So we have to understand the place, we have to be there in person, and we have to translate this to the global sphere. I think that's very important. And many times we see resources coming in, but they don't get off the ground because we have a lack of this translation in terms of understanding what's happening. And also in the line of how to make this perennial, I think we have to make the connections with the private sector and the public sector, trying to get to policies. So, for example, if it is not something solid, if it's not regionalized and contextualized, you need a market for local products, and it must be spread out so you can buy things locally. So logistics becomes easier. It generates a market for the products to be sold so the farmers can sell their products. And there are other things that will increase the level of the policy. So it is a separate chapter that we can open up, but at the different levels of the federation, and then how to make all of this perennial. And also a connection with the markets on the other hand. So we have this issue of doing a good translation and generating these strategies, showing that the risk is not perceived by the market, break down the barriers until you get to the ends, and generate the qualification so that this will happen. It's another way of bringing markets and scaling up what we're doing. So philanthropy has the role of helping in this experience that has been done, and it's successful, and connecting with policies and the market. But I think all of us together would do very well if we had this forum and these well-disseminated practices. It's another way of scaling up and making things perennial, making these connections, and later on they will solve many of the problems that we have. And that's not easy. I think, the problems are not easy, and they're not solved. They're not easy, so we have to bring everybody together at the same table and converge to potential solutions, bringing the academic world, the innovation sciences, new services, open markets. There's a series of other things that we can debate here. But to be very brief, I just talked about a few. Back to you, Wendy. Great, that was wonderful. Well, I'm going to ask all three of you a question. It is a question that you have to imagine, okay? So you who are here in these areas, with the communities and with the different actors, and how do you imagine the bioeconomy and 1040? What are the indispensable elements that you need for this Amazonic bioeconomy to be resilient and fair and regenerative? Who would like to start? Well, I can start. I think it's going to be a very interesting question, and I think that we have to create imaginary scenes about the possibilities of social bioeconomy so that we can work with models. There's something that I believe to be very important, which is the following. Unfortunately, and it really hurts me to say this, if you analyze, none of the production Amazons cover the costs of production in the Amazon. They don't cover it because when you put the production costs Besides the very expensive costs because of the difficulty of transport, there's a territorial issue. And you want something that guarantees the protection of biodiversity in the different territories, but the market does not pay the value that the products of socio-bioeconomy deserve. So I think that one of the issues that we have to think about is how to, in fact, be able to add value and reduce costs so that these socio-bioeconomic costs can be competitive. And in my humble opinion, this is not going to be done if we don't put socio-bioeconomy as a priority in a project, in a development project for the country. We have to put bioeconomy where they placed agribusiness at the time of the dictatorship, because then you have not only investment in logistics and infrastructure, you also have investment in the development of organizations that can think about technology and can think about solutions like Embrapa did, the Economic Institute, Agroeconomic Institute of Campinas. So this is a deep change we need. And the other one is to recognize and value the role of social bioeconomy in the protection of the Amazon. So only in the management of Pirarucu, you have the application of 15 million hectares. So this is a service, a global service that these traditional population is providing, and they don't get any recognition for that, any reward for that. So we cannot only depend on the market. We need to develop instruments like payment for environmental services that will pay for this protection of the territory, because this is the heart of bioeconomy. So I think it is very important for us to structure this policy, the strengthening policy of territorial arrangements, because that's what's going to maintain socio-bioeconomy in the long term. So I think in 2040, I think an optimistic view is to really see socio-bioeconomy as a pillar that is a priority inside the international cooperation agendas and in the government agenda, but recognizing the complexity the Amazon has, the timing the Amazon has, and the need of each community. That is extremely important to have this alignment, because today we have a lot of asymmetry. The projects come in, they are focused on the efficiency that disconsiders the basic challenges that these communities have. And so this is very important. And I think it's also very important for us to put this on the agenda, these other mechanisms that can strengthen territorial protection. Yes, that was very good, very good. Very good view and a great contribution to get to this economy in 2040. Simone, I see you on the screen. What is your opinion? What do you imagine? Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, João, for sharing your perspective. And I also share the same perspective. And my hope in bioeconomy, socio-bioeconomist, as we say in this plurality that we have to recognize in the Amazon, is that this bioeconomy, that it's the standing forest and the flowing rivers, they should not have a barrier to their development. It's the basic asset of this bioeconomy. So these value chains should be valued and certified, and the local communities who are in the territories, they should be the main actors and have greater participation in the decisions about the policies and the processes of bioeconomy. They will have access to direct funding, and for us to really have technological innovation. So this is the sharing of this knowledge, this innovation. It is between the Amazon countries. It's much more united. We'll see a lot more international cooperation between these different countries of the Pan-Amazonia region. I think this is our mission in the network. And then 2040, this network will be strengthened and working very strongly to be able to have this exchange of experience, and also strengthening the main roles of the local communities, integration of course, with these carbon emissions. This will change, and all of this will be part of a single strategy, not having different strategies. It will be an integrated economic policy, and it will be an instrument of resilience and for coping in these climatic changes. And my message is that I hope that the concept of living well or quality of life will be close and will be changed and will be transformed to include indigenous references for quality of life. And where it's living well that is collective, not only between human beings, but between humans and rivers and forests and and nature and all the spirituality that we have in this great Amazon. So it's living well is my hope, so that we can understand and incorporate this interdependence with nature much more from the knowledge of the indigenous populations. Thank you. I love it. I love this response. I love your answer, and definitely connectivity and the mission of understanding. We're not there yet. So thank you very much, Simone. Thank you for your view, because I think many people share it with you. Okay, Vinicius. Well, let's go. I would start by the following. What do I see that would be wonderful? And for me, it could be in 2026, 2030, any of these years, I would be very happy. If we had a country that recognized that knows about the Amazon, knows what we have in the Amazon, not only the Amazon, but mainly the Amazon, that recognizes and knows our biodiversity. So that would already be wonderful. It would be wonderful us to be able to have this disseminated. So tell everybody, and people will see this as an equity that we have, something that we would like to defend, and it's productive, people who are connected. It would be great to have that. And the second thing that I would like to see is improvement in the quality of life of the people who live there in these areas of the Amazon, and respecting a lot the knowledge, local knowledge, traditional knowledge, preserving the habits, and that would be great. And for us to bring the Brazilian aspects and the other regions, and bringing more of the Amazon for the rest of the country, that would be interesting. And I would like to see a very integrated ecosystem, a lot of organization, a basic organization, community organization, social events, new mechanisms, making the resources flow, and valuing all of the biodiversity, all the assets that we have. For now, I think the discussion is moving forward in terms of carbon emissions and ways of paying for it, but we have a lot more that could be valued in the culture, the art, and several other things. So if it were to dream, I would like to have a more connected ecosystem, and for us to have knowledge and recognition of everything that we have in our biomas and in our biodiversity. Thank you. I agree. There's a lot that is difficult, and carbon emissions that's the most that's the simplest thing to do, right? And there are other areas of value. But anyway, I would like to open up the panel to know if you want to add any comments, any other view that you have that was missing inside this situation here. If not, we're going to conclude. So we're going to thank all of you, Vinicius, João, Simone. Thank you very much for sharing your experience in a very clear manner and very deep understanding. I think this panel and this forum up to now, they have been a very valuable opportunity. in this event specifically, and recognizing how biodiversity and climate and bioeconomy are agendas that cannot be separated. So they really have to be worked on together. And we really want to get to a transformation in the view that everybody talked about now. And then we will continue inspiring and building bridges from the communities or from the political, public-private sector or the territorial sector. So thank you very much, everyone. Everybody who has joined us and are watching us, thank you for joining. For the invitation. Thank you to the organization. It was a pleasure to be here with you, and it was great to learn with Wendy, Simone, and João, and now we work together in this building. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation once again. And me too. I would like to repeat Vinicius' words, and thank you, and we'll keep the connection for the next steps. All right, so let's conclude. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you very much as well. And I thought it was a great dialogue, and I learned from different experience. And this format is also interesting in this event, that we have perspectives, different perspectives. So not only the one of researchers, people who are working in the territories and different levels, but from the communities as well, the indigenous communities who are in the territory and the films. So this format I thought was very interesting, where you bring the different perspectives. Congratulations on your initiative, and thank you for the invitation. That's right. Thank you very much, the Pan-Amazonian Network. And have a great day, all of you. Good afternoon, and let's keep talking.